Audito, hello, I'm Miah Grace in case you don't know, and I died on the operating table when I was 12, and we're gonna talk about that today. I grew up with like no dinero. Like, we weren't going without necessities, but we had to bargain hunt like there was no tomorrow, and we did that even when it came to dentistry, which I do not recommend. My wisdom teeth came in completely sideways, and they came in starting when I was like 11, which is not super common, and I got sent to an absolute chop shop to have that extraction done. Now, a few things that you should know, just as a background. Firstly, children react really weird to anesthesia. Related to that, I'm actually making this video to put some eyes on a fundraiser for my friend's kiddo who needs to have a very similar tooth surgery done. It's not wisdom teeth, it's something else. And there is a link to the GoFundMe in the down below. I'll have it pinned and in the description box, so please check that out. Secondly, I went to work for this place later as an adult, and that is how I know everything that I know. But like when I was a little baby teeny bopper, when all of this happened, for like a full decade basically, I thought that everything went normal and fine. For the most part. There were indications, but they weren't like heavy indications. Basically what happened, I went in for my x-ray, they had the consultation, everything was normal, they scheduled the surgery, and day of the surgery happens, I go under like normal, and the first thing that was kind of like, ooh, that wasn't quite right, that wasn't quite normal, was that I woke up during surgery. And that doesn't tend to happen. So basically I open my eyes, I'm looking around, I can feel my mouth is open, there's tools everywhere, and I can hear the drill going, but I couldn't feel anything. And so I'm looking up at the nurse, because when you're having oral surgery, they like hold your airway open basically. So I'm looking up at the nurse, and she's looking down at me and sees my eyes lolling around, and she's like, "Hey doctor, this kid is awake." And the doctor was like, no, her eyes are just open and moving around. That doesn't mean she's awake. I in fact have a penis and a degree, and it can't be wrong. And he goes back to like drilling my jaw, and now I'm starting to like kind of feel it, like pressure, not like pain, like pressure and movement. Like it felt like someone was taking my jaw and going like you know? I'm laying there and I'm like, this isn't the best situation. I should probably let this doctor know that I am awake. So I slip the cuff, like they cuff you down to the table when you're having surgery so that you can't flop around. Flip the cuff somehow, and I tap the doctor on the hand that is actively operating on my mouth, just to let him know like, hey, I'm awake. He panics, puts the drill down. I think he dropped it on my chest actually. And then I hear this slap sound behind my head, like a kind of sound behind my head. And that is the last thing that I remembered. And this was like strong memory, like in there. I assumed I had to have dreamt it because I had a lot of weird dreams around this same time, like as a result of the surgery. Like I just remember this really vivid, like floating in static feeling. And when I finally did like wake up from the surgery and come to, I still don't really have any memories. The only thing I remember like after the surgery is laying on my couch and everything coming back. I felt weirdly empty and weirdly like disconnected from reality. Like I would look around at everything and I was like, that's not real. This is not my house. That's not my family. None of this is real. And I kind of expressed this to my dad. And he was like, well, yeah, because whenever you go under for anesthesia, you like fully don't form memories and your body doesn't know what's happening to you and it's really disorienting. That's normal, that's fine. And I was like, okay. And I had a couple of like weird out of body experiences, and I was in a very religious background upbringing. And people were like, yeah, that's just evidence of the soul. Your soul just left your body during surgery for a little bit. You're fine. And I was like, haha, that's distressing. But I moved on and I didn't think about it anymore. But like I kept having the same super weird dreams over and over and over again. Like in one of them, I was in a waiting room and there was this lady that was like behind a desk, and she'd like call me over and be like, you're not supposed to be here. You go through that door. And then I'd go through the door and I'd wake up. My brain did not know how to process anything that had happened, and I guess that's how it did it. And that's like a really common type of dream to have for people who had near-death experiences. And I think it's really interesting that I still had those like waiting room, third space, bizarre dreams, even though I didn't know what had happened to me in the moment. My parents were not informed that that anything bizarre had happened. The only way that I knew anything had gone not to plan was because I woke up during surgery. And I had a memory of waking up during surgery, and I told my parents, and they were like, probably not. The doctors would have told us. So no alarm bells were raised for anybody, basically, except for me. And because the same week that I had my wisdom tooth surgery, my brother-in-law, who was the appropriate age to be having his wisdom teeth out, also had his wisdom tooth surgery, and his were bad. If I remember correctly, he almost bled to death. So people like lost their minds about how scared they were for Tim, and he got a whole lot of people like taking care of him, which is what he needed. But like, I felt kind of weird bringing up what had happened to me in reaction to that, because it's like, well, Tim almost died and I'm fine, so I shouldn't really be talking about this. Fast forward 10 years, I'm scrolling on Indeed and I see a job for an oral surgeon assistant, entry-level position. You're just mostly going to be like cleaning out the blood jars and operating the mouth vacuum and using the autoclaves. And I was like, you know what, that sounds like a fun job. We'll apply. It was $19 an hour. That's not bad. I had actually kind of forgotten about my wisdom tooth surgery experience. It wasn't really something that I talked about a lot because I couldn't verify that it had even actually happened. I felt kind of weird being like, this thing happened to me, when I didn't have proof that it happened to me. I was the only witness. It was pretty likely that I had imagined it, so I just kind of let it go. But eventually, I mentioned to one of the receptionists that I was pretty sure that I had my wisdom tooth surgery there because, you know, I remembered that I had a wisdom tooth surgery, obviously. The receptionist was like, oh, let me go find your file. And I was like, that sounds like fun, and then kind of forgot about it. I eventually got trained and started working in surgery rooms specifically, basically just vacuuming mouths out as the surgery was happening and passing tools to the doctor. That's most of what your job is. What I saw there was highly disturbing, and not for like blood-related reasons, for like ethics-related reasons. So usually when surgeries are performed, you have like a dedicated anesthesia person, you know, someone whose job it is to like manage the patient, make sure everything's fine. This place didn't do that. The same doctor that was drilling you and cutting you and doing all the doctor stuff was also the one who did the anesthesia machine. He was a bit of a character. I did not work there long, and I did file an anonymous informatory report to the Board of Medicine and the dental board and all that good stuff. I did what I needed to do. The doctor was the only person who was legally allowed to touch the anesthesia machine. That was the one thing that like the nurses and myself could not step in to help him with. He was kind of forgetful, and we would have to remind him like which tooth we were extracting, sometimes multiple times. He actually extracted the wrong tooth a couple times. He was a very, very distractible man, and he had like chronic illnesses, and he was prescribing himself medication for it. Some of those medications, I came to find out like in my last week there, were like the fun ones. His words, not mine, because he offered to prescribe me some of the fun ones. I did not want that. I didn't want that at all. That's illegal, by the way. Everything that I just told you about right there, all of that was a crime. That should not have been happening. But he really liked to do this thing where he would charge the insurance for a full dose of anesthesia, which is like, essentially the machine had this little white tube in it with like milky stuff in it, and he would charge the insurance as if a whole dose had been used. Not the whole tube, but like a whole dose. And he would try to use as little as possible. Like he would just try to put people under and then keep them just barely there. Huge red flag. Almost every surgery that we did, someone would wake up. Like just a little bit. They would like come to and start to move around a little bit. Very distressing. And then he would give them like a quick bump of the dose and they would pass back out, and like they would go limp, and their heart rate, because we're monitoring their heart rate obviously, that would like calm down a little bit. But like no one wakes up from surgery in a good mood in general, but these people, when they would like wake up and we'd have to wrestle them back down. But sometimes what would happen is he'd smack the machine and their heart rate would start to go slow, and you'd be like, awesome, cool, they're sleeping, that's what we want. And then the line would start to go flat, and that's not good. It's actually very bad. That means I have to go get the crash cart, and prep sucks, and it was very stressful because I didn't go to college for that, and I wasn't CPR certified. I was supposed to be CPR first certified. They did not CPR certify me. I knew CPR from YouTube. And getting things was like my job. So I'd get the cart, I'd get the sucks prepped, and I was trained to do that. Probably not well, but they would revive the guy and everything would be fine. And everyone else in the room was always so casual when these codes would happen. Like, I vividly remember them talking about, like, Game of Thrones. Like, fully coded, doing chest compressions, got sucks in the throat. And they'd be like, yeah, dragons. Dragons and princesses. And I'd be like, guys, human life. I feel like this is more important. I would ask them, like, aren't you guys worried that the patient is gonna remember, like, you talking about dragons while they were freaking coding? And they're like, oh, they're not gonna remember anything. They're not gonna remember anything from when they woke up. We don't have to worry about bedside manner because they're asleep for the whole thing. Bullcrap. Like, absolute bullcrap. Then on Friday of the final week that I worked there, this happened to a man who I will never forget. He is just burnt into my memory now. We prep him to go down for surgery. I was the one that would talk to them before the surgery, let them know what the procedure was gonna be like. They already talked to the doctor about it. I was just the refresher course. The nurse would come in, would give them all the IV stuff and hook them up to everything. Anytime a larger man would have a surgery and they would wake up, I would try very, very hard to talk to them and get them to understand that we weren't trying to hurt them, because wrestling a, like, strong man back onto the table, super not fun, very difficult. So I'm just speaking to him calmly, and he lays down, and during his code I'm saying, like, oh, you're gonna be all right, we're taking care of you, walking him through the process of what's happening and how we've got it under control, because I would want to know that. You know, basically the things that I wanted to know, I was letting them know. He came back, it was fine, and part of my job was to stay with the patients as they were coming back from the anesthesia and make sure that they were stable and together, and if anything happened, grab the nurse. And he was coming back and he was fine. As all of his stuff is being removed, he's being cleaned up by the nurses, he's looking at all of them, and then he locks eyes with me and he starts thanking me. And he's like, I'm a father of 2, I have 2 daughters, and he's telling me all about, you know, his family and thanking me for taking care of him. Me specifically, saw all the nurses, looked for me. That feels relevant, because if he didn't have a memory of everything that happened, how would he know that he wanted to thank me? I don't know. And before you're like, oh, you just probably wanted to talk to you because you were pretty. Everyone that worked at this office was gorgeous. They only hired retired cheerleaders. This was a problematic workforce. I think I've already established that. But one of the things they did was they specifically hired ex-cheerleaders as much as possible to be their nurses, which is, you know, that's fine. The same day, maybe 15, 20 minutes later, we're doing another surgery, this time on a teenage boy. And he does the same process where he wakes up, we smack the machine, he starts to code. I don't know why you would do this same thing multiple times if you know it happens every time, but whatever. Kid is coding, doctor's super, super chill about it. I go get the sucks cart because we have to do sucks. And then after I get the sucks cart, it keeps going for an uncomfortably long amount of time, and the doctor's like, we're probably gonna have to declare TOD, and I'm like, okay. So I go get the receptionist, and the receptionist is also just weirdly chill about this, which, like, yeah, it's an emergency situation, you can't be crying and screaming or anything, but I would expect to at least see a little bit of, like, solemnness. She was, like, walking with a little pep in her step. Everyone copes how they cope, you know? But it didn't look like coping. We didn't have to declare time of death, thank God, and this kiddo is fine. And as we're wrapping up, the receptionist mentions to me, oh, by the way, I read your file. It's super weird that you wanted to work here given what happened. And I was like, well, what happened? And she's like, well, you coded and you were dead for like 2 minutes. Now I'm like reeling. Mentally, I am like, so I'm like, hey, what do you mean? What do you mean? And she like walks me through the code, shows me on the file. I still don't really know like medical terminology super well. Yeah, I was legally dead for 2 minutes. And I was like, that's super weird because my parents were never informed. I was never informed. No one even mentioned that anything went wrong. And she kind of makes a face. She kind of makes a, oh no, oh no, that's another lawsuit, isn't it, face? Because they already had 3 malpractice lawsuits open against them. Not surprising. And like, I'm sitting there and I'm like, you know what? I have to go run the autoclaves and I have to prep the room for the next thing. My usual stuff that I would do. So I'm doing all of that and I'm just kind of thinking through, you know, the smack noise that I heard above my head. I pieced together on my own that I was seeing that happen to other people, and I figured, yeah, I did wake up in surgery. That did happen. I've now seen it happen. I know that it happened. I know that I have that memory of it. So there's no reason to question myself on that anymore. What I was not prepared for was finding out, you know, the other fact that I had coded. I figured that I hadn't coded because I thought I would know. And one thing that I remember being really weirded out by when I was younger, how much my chest hurt after surgery. And I thought that was just like a normal surgery thing. Like I came back and I remember like my shoulders and my chest hurt really bad. That was because I got CPR. In retrospect, that was from chest compressions. They probably didn't have to do more than like maybe a round. I would be surprised if it was more than that because chest compressions can like break ribs. So, like, I don't think they did a lot of them, but they definitely did some, given the feeling and just all of the weirdness and the emptiness that I felt was probably from, like, my insides being manhandled the way that they had to during sucks and during the compressions and everything. And like how sore my throat was didn't make any sense, and that makes sense now. Like I thought I just had dry mouth from not wanting to swallow anything. It clicked. It's just one of those things where like the information clicks into place and then everything else makes sense. So 15 minutes before the end of my shift, like 5 minutes before the end of my shift, I've got a trash bag in my hands and I'm ready to take it out to the dumpster. And you know, the trash bag is gotta be thrown away in a very specific way because we don't want the trash touching anything. You have to just carry it straight out to the dumpster. You can't put it down midway. I've been trained, like I was told this during training, and it was like a very critically important thing. So I'm getting ready to do that. And Nicole pulls me aside. She's like, hey, come here and sit down. And I was like, I have the trash though? She's firing me. Like she's telling me like, hey, it's not working out, you gotta go. And I'm like, this is because they coded me. They're letting me go because they killed me. You killed me and now you're firing me? That doesn't make sense. That's not fair. They also might have been firing me because I fully called the doctor out for making racist comments while he was reviving one of the guys. He made some very, very poor taste comments. This was right around the time that the George Floyd protests were going on, and the doctor is making the most disgusting comments I've ever heard someone say in real life with their mouth words. And I just outright said during the code, that's not acceptable. We should be focused on reviving this man. If you have enough time to crack a joke, you're not focused enough. Like, yeah, it was probably out of place to say, but he was way out of place first. And I would do it again. And I would do it again after that. I realize I'm getting fired. I accept it. It's fine. But I'm still holding the trash. And I'm like, do you want me to just take this out and then come back for my stuff? And she's like, no, we want you to take your stuff and then go. And I was like, okay, but what do I do with the trash? And she's like, you don't work here anymore. You don't have to take the trash out. And I was like, but it's in my hands. And I'm not allowed to put it down. Like, logistically, you could have thought this through better. You could have at least waited to fire me until I came back after throwing the trash out. But no, we gotta make it all complicated and weird. Probably the worst job experience I've ever had. Shout out Subculture, a close second. I already know from the beginning, I'm telling you this story because Beanie needs to have a tooth surgery. Insurance is going to cover everything except for the anesthesia, and anesthesia is expensive enough to kill me over, so clearly, you know, we have to make this happen on our own. Friends and family have already raised like 1/4 of what she needs to have it done, so I figured I would try to get some eyeballs from the general internet on the situation to help Beanie out. And instead of exploiting a child who's already going through a vulnerable, scary experience, I figured I would just exploit previous child me. Beanie is an excellent little kiddo, and her mom is a super, super hard worker. She's a single mom who works too hard, loves her kids, and never stops, with gentle hands and the heart of a fighter. No, but in all seriousness, she's working full-time and also supporting 2 nonprofits. She works very hard for a lunch program that's local to her area and just freaking amazing. And she's also involved with another nonprofit organization that has super helped out her community, as well as a bunch of people that I'm very close to. And I figure we want to give something back to her as a community, and that was all we were able to do. So now I'm opening up my community. So yeah, if you have any spare change rattling around, we would love to make this happen for Bean. Things are tough for everyone right now, so like don't feel obligated to give anything that you don't have, please. You know, this is one more cause in a sea of causes that needs a little bit of help. Teeth are not luxury bones. You do in fact need your teeth, and this will help her keep them healthy and happy for as long as it would normally be expected for a person to hold on to their teeth. We would really appreciate the help. Anyways, that's all I had. Thanks for coming along with me today. Let me know your medical malpractice horror stories in the comments down below, and like I said, that GoFundMe is linked in the pinned comment and the description box. I'll see y'all next time! Yeah, that's not okay.